So I hope the microphone is working today from outside because the weather is so nice. Let me quickly check whether the audio is working because I have a different microphone set up so that you can actually hear me. Today I want to talk about psychological safety again because it's important to get to high performing and very innovative teams. Oh yeah, I see. The audio is working. That's great. Let me know if something is not working. Oh, and I have to open the comments and chat so that I can actually see when you're writing something. So put questions in the comments, put your remarks in the comments, your experiences, and then let's go in this different setting, not in my studio. Give me a second here for the chat to actually activate that. Need a second for that. Please excuse me. Just gonna take 10 seconds or so to log in again. And then, of course, I have to do the capture. You cannot see that right now, but I have to just do these crazy captures again. Okay. So with that, let's hope I can log in. And then let's talk about psychological safety. And do you have any experience with actually creating psychological safety or with measuring it? Because I hear measuring and metrics a lot. When I talk to companies, especially larger global corporations, they always ask about metrics. Sometimes not initially, but the latest after a few months, they ask, so what's the progress? Where can we see anything? And the problem with a culture change is actually that it's not as easily measurable in numbers. And I'm currently writing an article which will come out on the Agile Compass newsletter this week about how to measure psychological safety. Because before we start measuring it, let's quickly recap why it's important and what it means. Psychological safety, I think the term is coined by Amy Edmondson. It means that people feel they can speak up, they can speak the truth in an environment. So if they see a problem with a door of an airplane not correctly mounted, that they actually feel safe to point that out. Or if they are, if there is a surgery in a hospital and the surgeon just misses something, and then someone else might just point it out and say, hey, I think you forgot something. Do people feel safe to do that? Or do people rather not speak up unless it's absolutely necessary? That is psychological safety. It's about pointing out problems, issues that you see, about uttering crazy ideas that you think, hey, this is crazy, but maybe it works, maybe it kicks off other ideas in the team. And psychological safety is about admitting your own mistakes. So if you are psychologically safe, if you have a psychologically safe environment or a team, then you have no problem to admit, oh, I messed up there. I'm sorry. How can we improve that? Because no one will judge you for that. They will say, okay, we as a team messed up. Not a problem. But we stand as a team. We win as a team. We lose as a team. So that is psychological safety in a nutshell. And now, why is that important? I mean, first, it feels nice, yes, certainly. But why is it important from a business point of view? And there, the observations people made is that teams who are psychologically safe are more high performing. They are better. They are, first of all, they quickly find issues because people speak up. If there is a problem, if someone messes up, they quickly say so, and you can fix it before it becomes an even bigger problem. If you cannot speak up, issues are under the rug for quite some time until you cannot hide them anymore. Again, look at Boeing. Look at other companies. Boeing is just in the news currently, and it's particularly bad because it cost lives. But other companies have that as well, and you see that in the news all over. So that's a problem, and this is mitigated by psychological safety. If you can speak up, you find problems early on. You can learn very quickly. It's also that you get all the crazy ideas that create innovation. So the crazy ideas that people in an unsafe environment would not be comfortable uttering. And it's also, it just creates that feeling where you feel safe and you don't have to fight these political and social fights. So how am I looking? Is it looking bad what I am doing? If I try to go for the simpler implementation of the feature instead of the more complex one, does it make me look lazy? You don't have to worry about anything like that in a psychologically safe team. A recent article a few weeks ago on my Agile Compass newsletter was that about the goalkeeper. And the interesting observation, let me quickly repeat it for those who haven't read the article yet. It's the interesting thing when a penalty shoot, you have the goalkeeper and you have the striker, and the goalkeeper basically has nothing to lose because the striker usually will score. Everyone expects them to score. The goalkeeper can only win. But the thing is that, I don't know, around 40% of the shots actually land in the middle of the goal. Okay, that's just statistics. And I think 30% to one side, 30% to the other side, something like that. The left side from the striker is more favored because most people are right-footed. But let's not go into that. The highest chance of success is when you stand in the middle of the goal, because this is where most shots land. Hardly any goalkeeper stands in the middle. More than 90% of the goalkeepers dive left or right, despite knowing that they would have a higher chance of actually catching the ball when they just stay in the middle. You know what the problem is with standing in the middle? It looks lazy. It looks unmotivated. It looks bad. So they'd rather dive and decrease their chances of success and their team's chances of success. And everyone would celebrate them for that. So they have to appear like they show action motivation. In a psychologically safe environment, you don't have to do that. You don't have to prove that you are motivated. The people around you will just, and also the management around you will just assume that you are motivated and doing your best. And if you then go for the simpler implementation of the feature, they assume you just made the sensible decision and it's going to create more value for the company. In a psychologically unsafe environment, people might fear that they look lazy and they might go for the more elaborate approach because it looks like they are putting in more work. And this is sadly was often rewarded in companies when it comes to promotions. If you look like you do a lot of work, you're promoted. It's not by creating value in many companies. It's by appearing to do more work. Sometimes it's even by appearing to do more work compared to your peers, which then leads to this egoistic elbow culture. And in psychological teams, we don't have that. And this is why the team members can focus on the job and they don't have to worry about all this other crap, and they don't have to fight for political agendas. I recently just heard Joe Justice, who's in Europe right now, talk about that, where he said that the Tesla or SpaceX or Neuralink, for example, people just don't have to worry about all that. Like, how do I get to the next higher position? Because there is no higher position. It's just everyone's basically on the same level. Yes, there are management roles, but they get paid the same as everyone else. And it's not a higher prestige role. It's just someone who's there for mainly compliance reasons. And so if all that falls off of you, you can just focus on the work, which is actually, to people who really want to work, to engineers, designers, to people who just love their craft and what they do. It's wonderful to just, you can focus on work. You don't have to put up with all the corporate BS. So psychological safety helps be more productive and more innovative. Now, the question is, how can we measure psychological safety? What does it look like from the outside? I mean, we know the end results, the lagging metrics, like increased innovation, higher performance, yes. But do we have earlier indicators, leading metrics, where we can actually see we are moving in the right direction? Because this is what, as I said initially, many global companies ask me at least after a few months. They ask, so what's the progress? Show us something. And in the article that's coming out this week on the newsletter is my attempt to collect a few metrics from my experience, also from what Amy Edmondson said, and also from other people who made observations and have good ideas. So measuring psychological safety. Let me quickly give you a glance of the article. It has no pictures yet, so I'm still working on the memes. If you have any ideas, please just put them in the comments, and I happily include them for this Thursday. So it's about measuring that stuff, and we talked about why this is important, and here are a few clues that I got from Daniel Coyle, actually, and I like them because they connect with my experience, how you can see whether an environment is psychologically safe, and for that matter, see whether a team or a company is high performing and is innovative. You can actually see that. I mean, you can literally feel that when you enter the room, the office, the factory. It's a little harder on a Zoom call or an MS Teams call, but you can also feel it there. You can literally feel whether this is a high performing and innovative environment. But we want to make it measurable somehow. So a few points that I want to go through with you are these here, and maybe let's not share the screen because that's a little boring. We have the nice nature behind me. That's why I'm sitting outside. But let's start with the first one that Daniel Coyle lists, is close physical proximity. Like, this is obviously not in a virtual environment, but if you're in a factory or in an office. If you see people close together, feeling comfortable, standing close, feeling comfortable, also touching, physical touch. That is the friendly kind, like a tap on the shoulder and saying hey, and touching you, or high-fiving each other. Things like that are indicators of psychological safety. People tend to do that when they feel safe. They act around more. There's a lot of people bashing that companies say, oh, we want to feel like a family or something, or like a group of friends. Yes, a company is not a family, it's not a group of friends, but I think we can still go for, we want to feel more like a family, we want to feel more like a group of friends. Because the thing in a group of friends is, I don't have to prove myself constantly. Maybe initially, But usually I don't have to, if it's with good friends, I don't have to prove myself. I can have a bad day and they don't assume they don't think about kicking me out of the group of friends, okay? They just assume I'm having a bad day, they're trying to help. And if it feels more like that, also these things come in, like physical proximity, like physical touch, actually. Not, of course, not in the bad way. I'm not talking about any harassment here. It's totally out of the picture, and that's nothing you want to see. It's just about that friendly mingling together. So that's an observation that you don't even need to look at it. You can feel that almost when you enter a room. It's like the air in the room. Eye contact is another one. Like when people actually talk to each other and have lots of eye contact, that's also an indicator that they feel safe. You can kind of see a similar thing in video calls. The one thing is obviously, do they have the camera on or not? Now, I know there are many reasons for when people turn cameras off, which can be fine. It's just another indicator. Like the team does that among themselves. Do they have the camera on or off? And if they have the camera on, are they attentive? Like, do they actually look at each other? Do they look engaged? And if you want to measure that, I mean, you can go ahead as a coach, as a leader, join the meetings and just count the interactions, the number of eye contacts, or if you're in the office, like the number of physical touch or something. But in the virtual environment, seeing how engaged people look, we have AI as a support. I'm actually using an AI tool sometimes. It's not perfect, but it can help you because after a meeting, it can spit you out statistics of how engaged people were. It tries to kind of see the facial expression and whether people look distracted, or whether the camera was on in the first place, or the microphone was on. And you can just get that. Nothing about this data is definitive. Like, you cannot say, okay, if someone doesn't turn the camera on, then it's not a psychologically safe environment. That would be wrong. Okay, these are just indicators. And that's something I repeat all the time. These are not just metrics that you measure and then say, oh, we are improving here, and this is the better team, and this is the worst team. That's not the idea. The idea is just to give you a few points, a few things to look at, to see where some teams or departments might need more help, more of your help towards psychological safety, and whether you're improving. You can just measure that over time and see whether the things you do are improving things. And we can get into what specifically you can do to increase psychological safety. Again, I also wrote several articles already about that on my newsletter, and you can get on the Agile Compass. Let me quickly, so that you know what it is. This is the Agile Compass. This is a weekly newsletter with all that stuff in it, and I have several articles about psychological safety, various aspects, and how you can create it. Also with certain specific exercises or games, simulations, how you can create psychological safety. So another thing that is typical for psychologically safe environments is when people speak, you have this high energy conversation. You don't have the long monologues or the people just, I don't know, you have just the high energy short bursts of exchange. Like it's usually short exchanges, people back and forth, and everyone participating. That's a good sign. If you have basically one or two people speaking and long monologues, few questions, that's not a good sign. Or in terms of psychological safety or in terms of high performance. Now, I want to reiterate. The goal here is not to cut people short when they're speaking longer. The goal is not to force people for closer physical proximity or to look at each other. That wouldn't work. That's backwards. Okay, these are just things that emerge from a psychologically safe environment. We have to create this psychological safety, not mimic the symptoms we see. Okay, that's important to understand, because I can imagine a few people on my mind where I would think they would now say, okay, your sentence can only be, you can only talk for 30 seconds and then the next person has to talk. That's not the way to create this, okay? No, I assume you understand. And again, these exchanges and having roughly equal talk times between people can be measured with the help of AI tools in video calls, if you want to. Again, I'm using these tools. They are not brilliant, but they can help to get a feel for it. They can help to see whether there is a roughly even distribution of talk time, whether everyone participated, or whether it turned into a monologue at a certain point in time. By the way, speaking about monologue, these live sessions I'm doing are always a monologue. Unless you, let me check, no, unless you put anything in the comments, then I'm basically talking to you and you cannot talk back. I have also a twice a month, what I call the Agile Mastermind. You can participate in that. This is a Zoom call and it has a back channel, so we can all talk among equals. It's much more lively, and I can actually also, you can bring specific situations from your daily work and your job, and we can assess them. Like, I can give you my assessment and maybe a few tips. Other Agile practitioners that are listening might also have a suggestion from their experiences. So if you're interested in that, you can find the Agile Mastermind. You can find it somewhere when you find me. If not, just shoot me a message and I will send you a link. Okay, so we don't want to have monologues. We want to have short bursts and energetic conversations, and equally distributed. There's also usually a low power distance that we observe for psychological safety. Means there's a high level of mixing between the hierarchies. If people don't care to talk to their boss in the same way they talk to their peers and point out the flaws in the idea of the boss, that's a good sign. In fact, for me, it's a great sign if I look at a team and I cannot identify any boss. Many teams still have a kind of project manager or team lead or something. If they are in a conversation and I cannot identify who is that boss, that's a great sign. Like in the Turn the Ship Around from Mr. Marquette, he also says that when you're on the submarine, when you can immediately identify the captain, because everyone reports to them, everyone asks them, can we submerge the ship, can we do this, I'm about to do this, can I do that? And you immediately know who the captain is. And he was proud on his ship, which became one of the best things, and I think they adopted it for the rest of the fleet. He was proud that from the outside you couldn't tell that he was a captain anymore, because people were just doing their thing and talking to him like on eye level. Okay, that's a good sign. That's called low power distance. If you're not if you're not afraid to talk to your boss, if you're not afraid to question the ideas of your boss, and if hierarchy generally plays no role. Also, what high-performing teams or psychologically safe teams that are high-performing have is few interruptions. Now this is an aspect where interruptions happen, but in psychologically safe teams, people are usually more mindful of each other's time. Yes, they interrupt each other because we have these conversations, but they are very aware of maybe if someone is in deep work, and they can assess whether they delay that. In not so safe environments, people often don't care or don't know to care. They just don't see the signs. So it's more respectful of each other's time. Let's put it like that. And that's also a thing you can observe. Sometimes it's just in the words. I mean, if you're in the office or in the factory, you can see that. In remote environments, distributed environments, you can sometimes see that in the tone in the chat. Something. If people have a group chat and how they approach each other right now. Do you have time now? No, okay, not a thing. You can see the respect or not respect for other people's time and deep work. Lots of questions. That's what I mentioned already. Lots of questions are a good sign. If people ask questions, it means they feel safe to ask questions. In a not psychologically safe environment, people will not ask as many questions. So they don't want to look stupid. They don't want to question the authority of the boss. All these crazy things that we want to get rid of. They are just stealing energy and time for what the team could do performance-wise. And then on the other end of communication is obviously listening. We already talked about eye contact, but if you see people actually listen, intensive, active listening, that's obviously a good sign. And if people can listen even to opinions that are contrary to their ideas, and then say, okay, you have a point there. What comes to my mind always is, I'm a kind of like theoretical physics nerd. When you think about these guys earlier, the scientists taking a walk, discussing certain things, or writing these letters to each other, questioning, attacking their arguments. But that's a good sign because they could do that. The other side would listen and would say, you have a point, and I can adjust my point. So together we come to a higher conclusion that none of us would have found individually. That is only possible if you respect the other side and if you assume the other one is not trying to hurt you or trying to get on top of you or trying to get the management position that you want to get or something. Only if you can assume that they are having good intentions, then this works. And this is a sign of psychological safety. And now we come to for me, a very beautiful and simple metric. And that is laughter. Humor and laughter. It's usually easy to see. It's one of these things, again, that you feel when you enter a room with a team. But you can also count that. You can just count how many laughs you hear. And when more of my time was spent in the office prior to 2020, I actually used that quite a lot. When I just was walking through the office and I listened. And from the high-performing teams was always when I heard that laughter or saw them maybe taking a break, mingling around the coffee table and being happy, laughing a lot. Amidst them, their manager, and you couldn't tell who's the manager. Okay, so laughter is a good sign. Of course, I'm not talking about gallows humor. That we're never going to do that, or this is a sunken ship, and that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, this is usually also not where people laugh full-heartedly. So the real humor and laughter means you feel safe if you can crack a joke. And also, to close the metrics kind of, is if you see thank yous, if you see small attentive courtesies like holding a door open for others, that's also another indicator for psychological safety. Now again, I want to repeat this in case new people came in. It's not that you force people to hold the door open or to say thank you or to laugh more often. These are just symptoms, indicators of the change we want to make underneath. So these are indicators. Changing them by themselves, forcing them to change, doesn't do any good. We want to create a psychologically safe environment. And the points I listed are just the indicators, how you can see how safe an environment is for a team, for a department, for a company already. And you can use it to measure the progress. Like if you measure it this week, next week, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, do you see a development? Do things improve on these metrics? Now, Amy Edmondson actually also proposed a kind of survey that you can use for psychological safety. But and she also said that this is take it with a grain of salt. That's also from her, because you cannot simply pop a survey and ask people, are you psychologically safe? Are you, the points here, let me quickly check if I can find that. No, I don't have it here right now. But the points are kind of like, do you feel safe enough to point out a problem or something, or to speak to a superior, or these things, and simple. Or how safe are you feeling? How comfortable? Would you say you can speak the truth in your environment, in your team? Things like that. Obviously, if you have such a questionnaire and ask people in a psychologically unsafe environment, you might not get an honest answer, depending on who's asking. So that's the first problem to keep in mind. And the second one is that Edmondson also points out is that each company has a different baseline. Like, do you feel you can say the truth? Is you always rate that compared to what in your environment is considered feeling safe to speak the truth. So for some people, there might even people at Boeing saying, yes, I can. I don't know. I haven't talked to them. But just calibrate it to the environment. So there might be a different baseline for different companies, and just keep that in mind. It's not an absolute. Such a survey can at most be an additional indicator that you might want to use. I'm not a fan of these surveys, but I can see the point, and I can also see that sometimes you might need them just to persuade others. So now we talked a lot about measuring psychological safety and about why it's important. Now, maybe to close this off, a few methods how to create psychological safety. Because that's ultimately the most important part. And then once you use these things, you can see whether your metrics improve. I'm well aware that these metrics are not the traditional metrics that many managers are used to. So how to create psychological safety? If I could answer that in just an hour, it would be awesome, but I can't. It's many things that we can do. So first of all, think back to the example that I used with the goalkeeper and the striker in the penalty shoot. One important distinction was that once the goalkeeper feels that they are not judged, no matter which action they take, and if that action is inaction, they're just standing still in the middle, and they know the team members will not think bad of them. They will always assume positive intent. That's, for me, a very important acronym, API. Got that from Kimberly Weefling from Silicon Valley. API, assume positive intent. When all the team members assume positive intent in what you do, then it's not a problem if you look lazy, if you mess up, if you make a mistake, if your idea wasn't good, if your experiment fails. It doesn't matter. They don't judge you on that. They say, you did the best you could do, and you tried to help us as a team. So it's that assumption, how we view other human beings, how we ourselves view others. When someone is late to a meeting, do you assume they are lazy, they are not capable of keeping the time? Or do you assume they have the best intentions and maybe there was something on the way that was more important and this is why they made the decision? Do you always assume positive intent? That's important. And my experience is that it's important to tell people about that. Always assume positive intent. Try to practice that. If someone messes up, try to not blame them or question their motives. Try to assume that they were pushing the limits. They were actually messing up because they were trying to do more than what was asked of them. And sometimes when you tell people to API, to assume positive intent, they will tell me, yeah, but that's not always true. Some people are actually lazy or are unmotivated or are sometimes even trying to actively sabotage things. So assuming positive intent, you will not always be right. To that I can say, yes, you're right. There are people like that. In my experience, it's the minority. So even if it would be 10% of the people in your company, which is way too much. If it's 1%, that would be crazy high, okay? 99% of the people have good intentions. So why would you punish them and treat them that way and put in all the control measures maybe that you have just to catch that 1%? Is what that 1% does by being lazy or kind of having that quitting innerly with already, or maybe even being malicious, does that really create so much damage that it is worth keeping the other 99% down? In some cases it might, okay? But in most it doesn't. That's the first part of the answer. Why, even if API, assuming positive intent, is not always true, you should still go for it. The second part, in my understanding, is more important. And that is, assuming positive intent is not about the other person. It's about yourself. I don't care whether the other person actually has positive intent. That's not what I'm caring about. What I'm caring about is the options and actions you have. If you assume positive intent, someone messes up, you will see different options, different ways to react to that than if you assume the person was lazy. You can try that. If we just assume a person tried to do their best, sometimes mistakes can turn into innovations. I often tell the story of Alexander Fleming, when he found penicillin. There was also someone messed up someone didn't clean the lab and there was growing mold over the petri dishes. And when you assume that someone was lazy, was not caring and messed up, your set of actions basically looks like, okay, sometimes who's to blame? Who can I fire? Who's going to clean up that mess? How are we going to clean that up? How are we going to regain the lost time now that we have to restart the experiment? This is your thinking. But if you assume positive intent by the people who did that, you say, oh, okay, someone forgot that. Well, let's look at that interesting mold that's growing over there. And then you might find penicillin. So it's not about the other person. I don't care about the other person. It's about how you can react to the situation. That's important. It's a very stoic way of looking at it. But it actually changes how you react. It changes your emotional reaction, and it changes your actual set of options, what you can do with a situation. And if someone messes up, the way better way to deal with that is to, how could we use that? Is that interesting? Let's look at it more closely. Let's learn from that. That's the sort of options that you want to have. Not, oh damn, how can we keep the schedule? Who can we fire for that? Who's to blame? And so on. So API, assuming positive intent, is about you. Or about the people you are trying to teach that to. So that's one way to create psychological safety, an important one. There are also a few exercises. And again, I point you to my newsletter, where I wrote several articles about that already. And Patrick Lencioni has a few exercises in his book where he's also calling lack of trust the first of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And trust and psychological safety is closely related. It's not the same thing, but it's closely related. And to build trust also plays into building psychological safety. So what he does is he has the personal history exercise, which is basically, you can vary that, and you could just say, okay, get together in pairs, or if you are with another person, you just tell them, oh, hey, tell me your life story. Start with birth in 2 minutes. Tell me your life story in 2 minutes and start from birth. That's kind of the first little step towards more trust and also feeling more connected, because it adds a personal realm. It doesn't force people to open up, but it can lead sometimes to interesting conversations and interesting revelations, even in teams that have been working together for years. When they suddenly know, you migrated here when you were 8 years old, so it must have been tough, or things like that. The personal history exercise, you can find it in Lencioni's book, or you can find it in my article if you want to learn how to do it. Then that's a nice way to create first psychological safety. Another one is like a lifeline exercise where you have the ups and downs. I find this especially powerful because people notice that even the managers and bosses they look up to and think, wow, they made it, have ups and downs in their life. And then you can talk about the ups and downs. And it's just creating that personal connection. Another way to create safety is take the edge out of mistakes. Actually, instead of trying to avoid mistakes, try to make mistakes. We do that. Kimberly and me do that in the leadership workshops we do globally. So if you're interested in these leadership workshops, by the way, they are awesome. They are called work shocks because they shock you, but it's just a short time, and it changes managers and leaders completely. It's always amazing to see how people sit there in their suits on the first day and are very reluctant, and how they thrive and become high performing on the day 2, 3, and after a week is over, they're completely transformed. It's amazing to see. And one way how Kimberly does that is by asking people to make at least 3 mistakes a day. And then when someone makes a mistake, we take the edge out of that. Because when someone makes a mistake, we go, woohoo, mistake. We celebrate that. We actually celebrate every little mistake. And it's just always a short chuckle, and it just, you see people become more courageous and become more comfortable. And also the projects they do and the ideas that come up are so much more, it's just so much bigger and better what they can create. It's just as simple as saying, okay, you must make at least 3 mistakes a day. And if someone makes a mistake, or if you yourself make a mistake, you go, woohoo, mistake. You celebrate it. Wonderful way to do it. Another way to create more psychological safety is to just be a little more silly. This might not work in every environment, but again, Kimberly and me, we did that with, let's say, conservative Japanese companies and managers. So I would almost say it works everywhere. Maybe not everywhere, but almost everywhere. It's just be a little crazy, like dress crazily. The very least you can do is put on funky socks if you want to still be able to hide it. But I don't know, wear a crazy hat, wear a colorful shirt, do things like that. Bring some, I don't know, toys to play around with in a workshop, in the office. It's just, make it a little more fun. If you're on a Zoom call, just change your background picture to some, I don't know, the latest video game you played, or just make it a little more fun, personal, and crazy, just sometimes. Because that takes the edge out of mistakes, and takes the seriousness out. And that's, it might sound like you cannot do that in high stakes environments. Okay, like, I don't know, flying planes, having a nuclear plant operating, or having a chemical plant operating a chemical plant. But that's exactly what people do, and that's amazing. Like, the customers we have, some of them have chemical plants, and they are very high on safety. Really, that's safety for the people, for the environment. And they are big on being fun and being a little crazy, because they know they have to build that psychological safety. Because for them, for the safety aspect, it's crucial that people feel safe to speak up. So, especially in these high stakes environments, it's important. I've also heard stories from surgeons, like cracking jokes while they do operations, they do surgery on people. That's a good thing, because that's diffusing the tension, and that's making it easier for people to speak up and to feel safe. And with that, these were just a few of the things you can do to create psychological safety. I use many of them all the time with my clients when I work with them, trying to help them be more innovative and more high performing. And it's also, some of them I wrote about it in my newsletter. Again, if you haven't been on that, many who are watching here probably already have, are on there, but I cannot show it anymore. I don't know why. Here it is. Then get on it. It's free. I have a paid option where you get more, and we can engage and mingle more, and we have a Discord. But just go for the free version, and read the articles, because there's so much in there for psychological safety, and there will be more. As I said, this week will be the article about measuring psychological safety, about the metrics, which I think is an interesting topic. And with that, I thank you all for watching. It was nice. It was also nice to do that outside here this time. Maybe I'm gonna do more of that instead of my studio. I hope the audio quality was okay for being outside. And then happy to see you on the newsletter, on the Agile Compass, and on the next live stream. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.